Hello everybody, my name is Heidi Lee. I'm a jazz singer, film composer, and teacher. Today I'd like to share with you my experience of going back to school to pursue a music degree as a mature student in Italy when I was almost 30 years old. I actually didn't know anything about jazz until I came to Italy in my early 20s. I grew up in Hong Kong singing Cantonese opera with my parents, although I also received some Western music education at school, as well as learning piano as a kid. Before coming to Italy, I already had a degree in politics and international studies. When I came to Italy, I had a 9-to-5 job in an office, like a very normal day job. Perugia, where I used to live, is a relatively small town, especially if you compare to any of the Asian cities. So after work, I didn't have much to do. I discovered a jazz club right next to my home that I could go even by walking. They had around 3 to 4 concerts plus 1 jam session per week. A lot of the people who attended this jazz club, they were frequent goers. After a while of attending this jazz club, I also befriended with a group of music lovers as well as musicians. That's also how I met most of my friends in Perugia. After a while of going to this jazz club, not only did I gain a lot of friendships, I also started to appreciate jazz. I found this genre of music really intriguing, not only because of its sonority, but also because of its democratic nature. Everyone in the band, no matter what instrument they play, could have a chance to solo, so everyone could shine. Everyone could have their own moment. And the whole idea of interplay, everyone is listening to everybody else, that was also something very interesting for me. Knowing that the musicians are improvising on stage, it is completely different from the classical musicians where every note they play has to be written out. So that improvisational element in jazz also intrigued me a lot. I felt that it's a music that can let you express whatever you want and give you a lot of freedom to experiment. As I get more into the music, I also started to do a lot of self-studying. I learned a few jazz standards so that I could throw myself in the jam session even if I didn't know much. Sometimes, just by singing a few tunes at jam sessions kind of set me up for the future, let me internalize more the tunes, because learning the tunes at home is completely different from trying them out in public with a group of live musicians. And that also gave me more motivations to get better in the craft. I also started to attend and enroll myself into different jazz workshops. I started to take jazz piano lessons as well. Slowly, I got really into the music, and I just wanted to keep getting better and better. And that's why I started to look into the possibility of enrolling myself into a more structured program. And eventually, enrolling myself in a music conservatory was kind of like an obvious option for me. As I just told you that before coming to Italy, I already had another undergrad degree. So doing another degree program just for the degree was not really my goal or my priority. I also looked into other music school or other music programs other than music conservatory, but at that time I actually thought that for someone like me who did not have a lot of formal music training, in a school context, in a music conservatory context, it would help me to gain enough of the basic knowledge at least. I thought at that time that I didn't even have all the fundamental knowledge that I needed to proceed to a different level. So I thought that a more structured, like a university context, would kind of help me to go beyond what I could do as a self-taught student. As I started to do more research on what options I had in terms of higher education in music in Italy, by talking to different musicians, someone told me about Siena Jazz University. And it is a private school, focuses solely in jazz music, that offer a degree program. The choices could be doing a degree program at the conservatory in Perugia, where I live, or this Siena Jazz University. While talking to different musicians, some of them told me usually public conservatories are not that good for jazz because they're more focused on classical music, and the jazz departments in Italian conservatories are actually relatively new, and they are usually not as highly regarded or considered in the school. And also the school organization usually is not that great because they're public institutions. Often schools are so badly organized that classes may not start until late November. So I started to look more into the whole Siena Jazz University program. One thing that popped out for me was that they are so organized in a way that you don't actually have to go to school every week, but you only go there 3 to 4 days every other week. That was perfect because that means I could still keep my day job. I negotiated with my work and they allowed me to work 3 to 4 days every other week remotely. And that was perfect. As a mature student, one of the most important things is the financial aspect, right? I was definitely already too old to keep asking my parents for the financial support. So it's very important for me to keep my financial independence, and that was one very big consideration for me. So the classes were all concentrated in these 3 to 4 days in Siena, which is only 1 hour and 15-minute drive from Perugia. So every other week I would just go there and stay in the hotel. So I didn't even have to move myself to Siena. Actually, there were other schoolmates who came from much further away, like in south of Italy, in Puglia, in Calabria. They would just drive or even take a bus every other week to come to Siena for the 3 to 4 days of lessons. And that was still sustainable for them. So this is definitely something that mature students need to consider. Of course, Siena Jazz University is a private institution that is focused solely in jazz music. So if you want to learn jazz, where better else to go? I mean, you go to Siena Jazz University to learn jazz, right? Of course, because it is a private institution, it also comes in a slightly higher price than your normal music conservatories. I think the music conservatory would have cost me around 1,000 euro per year. Siena Jazz cost me 3,500 euros a year at the time. I don't know if they've raised the price now. But for someone who has a stable income, it was still really affordable. I mean, especially if you compare this with US or UK institutions. That's a really, really good price. About teaching qualities, most of them are very highly regarded and experienced performing artists. So you're basically learning not only the theory, but you're learning actually the craft from the teachers, because they also have experience as performing artists, and I think that is also very important. The others are scholars or experts in the field, like composition or jazz history, for example. Another great aspect of Siena Jazz is that every student would have at least 2 instrumental teachers. I had 2 singing teachers, one focused on vocal technique and one focused on improvisation. I think having 2 teachers was super useful in giving me more perspective in my instrument, my voice. And same story is for other instrumentalists. So double bass would have 2 teachers, pianists would have 2 teachers, so on and so forth. So in that way, we gained different perspectives and approaches for the subject matters. Another thing I really like about the curriculum was the focus in ensemble class. Again, even for ensemble class, we had 2 different teachers. Every time we went to school, we had 4-hour sessions of ensemble class. So we were playing in groups guided by one teacher. That was also very amazing because I think that was the class in which we could really put everything we learned into practice by playing with other musicians. Now let me talk about the experience as a student in the Italian education system. Coming from the Anglo-Saxon education system, the Italian system is definitely a shock for me. I was so surprised that you can decide when to have your exams. The course was for 3 years, but you have 3 extra years right after to complete your degree. So basically, if you somehow cannot finish your exam in the first 3 years, you still have another 3 years to slowly complete all your exams and the final thesis, which I will talk about later. There are around 4 sessions every year to have exams, so you can decide when to take what exam. Basically, you have the choice to schedule and reschedule your exams. Repeat as many times as you want. For example, after one academic year, maybe you feel ready to do a couple of exams in May, which is at the end of the academic year. But if you don't feel ready, you can wait until next academic year to do your exam. And actually quite a lot of students would do that, because then that means they have the whole summer to prepare for the exam. You may do some first year exam in October, let's say, of the next academic year. And when you do that exam in October, if you get an okay mark, but if you think you can do better, you can refuse that mark and then redo it again in the next session or in the future sessions. In my case, I think I did a few first year exams in the second academic year. There were a couple of very challenging exams that I waited a bit longer to finish. And eventually I finished all my third year exams fuori corso. So fuori corso actually means after your 3 years of school, you still have other 3 years to complete your exams. And so when you're out of that 3 normal years to do the course, you're fuori corso. So I did a couple of exams fuori corso, and eventually I completed my final thesis and the presentation the end of the second year of my fuori corso, I think. So I just mentioned a little bit about final thesis. Yes, even if you're doing an undergrad degree in Italy, in order to graduate, you need to present your final thesis. And in my case, I had to do an 80-page thesis, plus a presentation at graduation. The presentation of your final thesis is also your graduation day. You and your schoolmates can have totally different graduation dates. When you finish your final thesis, you have to communicate with your school and to set a presentation and graduation day, where there will be a committee of examiners, of teachers, where you have to present them your final thesis and they would ask you some questions.
Poi ovviamente l'opera cantonese si fa anche oggi, ci sono sempre dei sviluppi nel genere come nel jazz.
And because we are music students, we also had to do a recital related to your final thesis. I think that was really cool. After you finish the whole presentation and recitals, you will be sent away from the room, and the examiners would take the time to discuss about your performance. When the examiners are ready, they will invite you back and announce your final graduation results, as well as the fact that you're graduated, and they will congratulate you.
Offriamo a Heidi il diploma di primo livello in canto jazz con la votazione di 110 su 110.
Wow!
So basically, your final presentation is also your graduation. So that's why you can see Italian students going to this graduation presentation dressed up nicely. After the announcement of the graduation, they also get to wear the corona da loro. So the laurel crown, is that how we call it in English? So it's made of alloro leaf. I think it's a Greek tradition. By the way, this graduation presentation is open to public, so basically your friends and your family or your schoolmates can come to watch, and of course they can celebrate with you. So let's talk about the challenges. There are a lot. As you can imagine, the language barrier was not something to underestimate. By the time I enrolled at Siena Jazz University, I think I had been in Italy already for like 3 or 4 years. I could speak Italian pretty well, but actually I learned Italian by speaking to Italians. I didn't really receive any formal education of the Italian language. Going back to school was a bit challenging for me because the written Italian was a bit different from the conversational Italian, and academic Italian is also pretty difficult for me. There were a lot of things that I couldn't understand just by sitting in class, so my strategy was to record all the classes. When I went home, I would just listen to the lessons again and writing out the notes by listening to the recordings. Some recordings are still very useful today, especially the recordings of my voice lessons. I feel like every time I listen to them, even now, I am still digesting, I'm still learning something new. Because at that time, I had only a certain level of understanding. Throughout the years afterwards, I started to understand more. And every time I listen to the lessons, I feel like I'm still getting more. So that was how useful these recordings are. Another big challenge for me was related to the fact that I was a mature student. Most of my schoolmates were high school graduates when they came to university, right? So they were really young. Most of them were 18 or 19 years old. Most of them were already quite experienced jazz musicians, and they were already so determined to be professional musicians in the future. And by the time I went to Siena Jazz, I only had a couple of years of experience with jazz music. Before that, I didn't know anything about jazz, so I did struggle quite a lot in the beginning because I felt like it was kind of beyond my ability. Eventually, I kind of got by. I didn't fail the exams, but I also didn't do that well. Like I would got around 24 out of 30 kind of thing, which is actually not that bad for a newbie, right? But then I could see my peers much younger than me getting like 27, 28, 29, someone even got 30. You will start comparing yourself with the others and you feel really bad. Like it was a big challenge to my self-esteem, I think. Slowly by slowly, I changed my mentality, and instead of comparing myself to the others, I told myself, well, Heidi, you only discovered jazz around 2-3 years ago, and you never had any formal jazz training before. Now you overcame the audition and the entrance exam. You got into Siena Jazz University, and now you even get 25 out of 30. It's not that bad. Later on, I get even like 27, 28. And so I was making progress. So I started to only look at where I started and where I arrived. And I look at that progress. And I actually felt pretty good about it because I was learning, I was progressing. And I think this itself was a very important lesson for my personal growth. I was no longer comparing myself to the others. I was just looking at my own path and saw how far I went. And that motivated me to keep going and kept working hard. So, to conclude, was it all worth it? Would I do it again? Yes. It's a hell yes, definitely yes. I think I grew a lot as a musician, as an artist, as well as a person by going back to school. Siena Jazz gave me a lot. Apart from overcoming the challenges and learning the knowledge all the teachers have given me, I also gained a lot of friendship. I got to know a lot of talented musicians. I get to learn from a lot of amazing teachers. I learned so much, and I even had the courage to do a project that I always wanted to do but never thought it was possible, which is youth quartet that I'm bringing around on tour nowadays to bring Chinese opera and jazz together. That's kind of like bringing my cultural heritage with what I acquire as an adult, my newfound passion, bringing them together. It was actually part of my thesis and final recital. So I think without the whole Siena Jazz experience, who knows, maybe I would never have actualized this dream of doing such an ambitious project. So I hope that my story and experience would encourage some of you who are watching this right now who are probably thinking, oh, maybe I want to change my career path now. Is it too late? I'm already in my early 30s, or I'm maybe in my 40s, 50s, who knows? I want to tell you that it's all worth it if you do it for yourself. I didn't do it for having another degree. I did it for myself, for my own growth. And even if I hadn't decided to become a professional musician, I would still think that it all worth it because of all the experience and knowledge I have gained. So even if I would have kept music purely a hobby, I still think that the experience was a great satisfaction. So if you ever wonder if you should go back to school again, for whatever reason, if that reason is you, if that is for you, even for your own enjoyment only, just do it. It will be all worth it.